So usually how I like to start these conversations is about an individual's journey. And I'm very excited to chat about yours because you have done quite a few things in the clothing space, which I'm sort of passionate about. I think it's such a huge market that is needed to be sustainabilized. I don't know if that's a word, but I think that there needs to be a different path. I think for the industry as a whole, and I think you have done a ton of different things around it, especially around sort of the education with the book, and I'd love to get into that. But let's just talk about your journey in sustainability and sort of ethical clothing and manufacturing, and try to get sort of your path of how you even got into all of that, and then the good tea and just source my garment and just all the different things you have your hands in. Just tell us how you even got to that point.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So I guess it started way back. Like I think this was 2000 and I can't even remember the 5 or 6. And I was in New York and I was working as a product manager there. Nothing glamorous. It was a sock company, hosiery company. But we were packaging like in plastic. Every sock was packaged in a plastic bag, and I
Right.
just felt like the company didn't really care about its employees. And I just felt like it was just, I don't know, my heart has always been in, I think, helping others, as well as I've always had an entrepreneurial drive. And I decided while I was out there, and I always loved to learn. That's another thing. So I went to FIT while I was out there, and I started learning about like the organic farming. And like we were at that time, we were just learning about like, oh, it's healthier to eat organic foods. So I was like shocked to find out about the farmers and the state that they were in, just dealing with all of those chemicals. It was the runoff that was going into the water stream, the animals were eating. We were using genetically modified seeds that aren't natural. And I just learned a lot about it. I was like, wow, this is so crazy what it's doing to the planet. And I decided to I quit my job. I moved back to Canada, and I decided to launch, at the time, like the good tea was called Pure Blanks. And I sold blanks to wholesale businesses, and that's kind of how I got into the world of sustainability. And through there, like the company did really well actually, and I was nominated by Apparel Magazine as one of the top 40 innovators. And I really felt like I could even have more impact if I helped other businesses. And so when I just wanted to move away from inventory, inventory is a little bit of a hell if you've ever been in the apparel industry. So I just decided like I wanted that freedom to travel and like help other businesses. So I started consulting, I started Source My Garment, and I helped other brands with manufacturing overseas. And through my journey, I started learning more about the manufacturers and how much effort and skill and like actual love goes into these products. There's not just like, the magic doesn't just happen where the factory is. There's a whole process starting from the farm. There's a knitter, dyer, weaver. And I'm so lucky that I've had such strong relationships where people trust me enough to, take me to all these different places to see the whole process. And from there, I've just, my mission has always been, I think, to humanize the apparel industry.
I wanted to understand like what manufacturing is obviously a huge deal, right? And talking global and international, and what is sustainable, sort of what is ethical, and all these different things. So what does that mean for you, right? When you sort of define that, and when looking for a manufacturer, and or when you were looking for one, like what did you look for, and like how do you determine if it's the right partner or not, right? From a sort of ethical point of view, right? And there's so many different factors, I'd imagine. But like, I guess, what did you learn in the process of speaking with manufacturers and learning about the process and learning about all the intricacies that go into it?
So I think the bottom line is that people think that sourcing and manufacturing is so complex. It's not
Hmm.
complex. It's only there's an ocean between us. And like the way the
Hmm.
state of the world is, like honestly, like everything is virtual now. And it's not even about sourcing is not about like, oh, factory. Sourcing is actually another word is relationships.
Yeah.
Like they are your partner. And if you can vibe with that, with the manufacturer and really get to know them, like that is the bottom line of anything sustainable is like, I would say, more ethical way of doing
Hmm.
right? A
Hmm.
responsible way. And it just begins with that. And it's really like, as a startup, it's a bit trickier because we're at the mercy of the factory because we're not doing the volume. So you have to really, be in sync with the factory and be honest and just say like, you know what, I'm committing to growing. Will you work with me? And get to know them and like take them out for dinner. It's like dating. Like, honestly, that's like
Sure.
I talk about it. Like you just got to date the factory owner, like take them out for dinner, talk to them, what are their values? And then you start from there. And the only reason why like these bigger brands, they're not, I guess, they just don't understand their supply chain because they're so big. Like they have no idea. They'll be like, I want a shirt for, $4. And then they talk to an agent, the agent outsources, and then it's like a bidding war. And then you
Mm.
no idea who it is. And the minute you don't know where something is, that's a problem. Like you should be able to map out, and it's not just the factory, which people have to understand. It's like you have to know if you're getting cotton, you should know where the farm is, and that's
Hmm.
fair trade cotton certified. You need to know like where the dyers, the knitter. It's not just where things are being put together. It's so intricate, and that's why like I don't know how to explain this in like an easy way, but this is why people don't understand the costs of like a garment.
Right.
It's, it's because they don't understand the supply chain. Nobody understands the supply chain, not even these bigger manufacturers. And now they try to cover their asses. Oh, sorry, my mother's words.
Do it.
Okay.
Love it.
Like to, because they don't know. They're like, we don't care. Profit is what their driver is. But for a social entrepreneur, it's not. And this is like the way going forward. I think, we've learned from this whole pandemic. It's not just about money. It's about profit. It's about the planet, and it's about people. So if you can understand like those are the values of your company, then you should be able to like simply look at things that way, not like, oh, you send an email and like, hey, where's my stuff? No, they're your partner. Like you are married to them. If you
Yeah.
don't have a product, you don't have a business. And that's why like you have to be transparent. You have to tell their story because they're just as much involved in your success as much as you are. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. 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 Well, I guess you're the only person I know that I think has written a textbook.
well,
It, I
it's
mean, it's just I mean, an incredible product that you have sort of released. So I want to talk about what the book is because I think it's sort of like a Bible for this world, right? In this work. So just kind of go over what's in the book and like who is it made for, right? Is it made for, potential founders that want to get into doing their own sort of clothing line, right? And understanding the supply chain, or is it for executives, right, in these bigger brands to understand like where your product is made, understand more of the ecosystem
yeah.
for these bigger brands, or is it a little bit of both, right? And even obviously consumers, can dive in and obviously take a ton out of it as well. But what was that process like, and I guess what exactly was the mission of writing it, right? What did you want people to get out of it?
So as I was helping brands with, I guess, product development and manufacturing overseas, there's a lot of fear in manufacturing.
Hmm.
There's the reason why people are scared is because they don't understand. And so this book was meant to help my clients initially with like understanding the process. Like they need to
Right.
understand, like if you're doing an approval for a sample, you can't sit on it 2 weeks and then expect it to be there. So it's understanding the whole product development cycle too, or clients will come to me and they'll be like, oh, I want to make this t-shirt, but they don't have a tech pack. They don't know their target costs. Like there's a whole process even before you start manufacturing that you need to understand. And so I wanted to be able to help more people, but it takes so much of my time. So I just thought, if I could write this book, and no one ever wrote a book, I'm like, and I decided like, if I had this book when I started, this would be so much easier. So everything that I know, as much as I can help somebody, I've put into this book to understand the process of just starting with an idea to work through product development, then counter sampling with the factory, and then finding a factory overseas and working through sustainability. So it's like the whole, like from start to finish, how to do it.
I guess when people come to you and when you do sort of the work with brands, like do they come very green, right? As far as like they don't know anything, right? Or do they have specific questions that they want to know about? If it's, what's the difference between cotton and organic cotton, right? Like I think there's these smaller things, and there's small steps to do as a brand to like take simple steps to be a little bit more conscious, right? A little bit more ethical and sustainable, just out of the materials you use, right? I mean, I think sometimes brands don't take small steps because they don't think it'll be sort of maybe good enough, right? And it's just like, oh well, this is the cheaper option. I don't have the ability to be like a full cycle from my entire supply chain and my entire company to be like sustainable. So I'll just use whatever, or just regular cotton or whatever it may be. So how do they? What are some of the big major questions that companies and brands or founders have for you?
Oh, that's such a good, you're so good at interviews. So yeah, this it's a really good question. So, and main question people come to me is like, how much is this going to cost?
Mm,
And like, I get that you need to understand a cost, but it's so difficult for me to give a cost when I don't know the fabric specifications, and most people don't even know themselves. And they don't know, like they haven't worked through creating a pattern or product development. They haven't created their tech pack. They haven't finalized stuff. So I can't give them a cost because I need to know the weight of the fabric, like the GSM. I need to know if there's any washes. I need to know the fabric count, because I do everything from the beginning. We don't have stock lying around, because if you leave that stock, like fabric lying around, it loses its, because it's the knits, especially, they explain it, but it doesn't, it shrinks and it just messes things up. It just can't sit basically like that.
hmm
So yeah, the main questions are like, how much is it going to cost? And I really need to, well, do you have a tech pack? No. I'm like, okay, why don't you get a tech pack? And then I need to know the measurements to get consumption. And the other part of it is that I could sort of give you an idea at that point, but it isn't finalized until you're working through the counter sampling, because they need to figure out how much time is it going to take them to do it.
hmm
Right. And like the margins are really like, for them, they don't make much. That's why they're looking for quantities. And then the other problem is that people don't understand when you're working offshore, like you need the quantity. Like what do you think that they're going to make off of $4 or $5 a shirt? Not much, you know?
Yeah.
So, and they
Yeah.
pay themselves. Like running a factory is so expensive. The machinery is so expensive. Energy, paying the workers, like it's so much, and nobody wants to pay for certifications or like helping them out.
What did you learn from, or what are some of the questions that the manufacturers have, right? And like, I guess, what do they probably want the same thing as the companies or the founders want. I mean, they want a good partner too, right? I mean, they want to probably somebody who's gonna hold some same values that they have, right? They want to date you too, right? Like they don't want somebody that's gonna be a bad client for them, right? So I guess we never sort of hear their side of things, right? And like what they look for, and maybe what their processes are. So give us a little insight on what that side's like.
Yeah, they really want you to go there and meet them actually. Like
hmm
that's really
Yeah. Makes sense, right?
like they want to advocate, they really advocate for that, like, oh, you should come meet us. They, if there are ethical, that they will invite you, and that's how you should be setting up a relationship, and then doing a little bit of sampling work and just seeing like how you communicate. And they want to know that, what, are you in it for the long haul? Like, are you if you're a small person, like small company, they want to know that you're committed to this, that you can really get them volume. That's the main thing. And they want to know that you're reliable. Like I've talked to so many factories where they've gotten screwed by, people who just leave them in the middle of production and just be like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't pay. Like I'm
Hmm.
not talking
Right.
like, I'm talking of like close to like $1 million. I've
Wow.
yeah, like this is like even more like some of the factories that I've worked with, because they work with like big volumes and then they end up getting screwed. And even if they open with a bank a letter of credit, what they ask for, just to see that, yeah, okay, these guys are legit, they have money. Did you know that we as like businesses or bigger corporations can actually break that LC? Like we can
Hmm.
break it. That doesn't mean that they're going to get the money. So they get screwed so bad. And that's the only reason why, like when you go overseas, they're really hesitant to be like, oh, like, what do you want to see? Like in the factory, like they're a little bit hesitant when you're just new to working with them, because they don't know how you're going to see like how they really operate, because the way we operate here is different. Like for example,
Hmm.
one of the a lot of the factories say that they work 9 to 5 there, but that's a load of BS, because that's not how they just do it because that's how we want them to work. But they don't
Right.
like that. They start working at 11 till 8. You know, like that's not how they work. Or you'll find sometimes people working on the floor, and then people here will be like, another misconception is like, oh, you're treating them so bad, you're not even letting them sit on the table. But they don't even understand that's a cultural thing.
Right.
That's like
Right.
sacred to work on the floor. So there's like things like that. So they're actually very afraid of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you're actually the very first person that's ever asked me that. Like, that's just so. That's such a great question. Thank you so much.
I think what was so smart, what you did is you started the Good Tea, right? Which is it's sort of own like separate entity and company. But I think it was smart because you're sort of that bridge. You can be that bridge for everybody, right? Is that they could sort of, go through you, right? And I know we had, talked about doing some cause artists like apparel and stuff like that. It's like, well, I don't have the time to like go visit, right? Or like go, and I think a lot of people probably feel the same way. So they need like this trusted person that has done the legwork, right? and done all these different things to kind of be that advocate and be that bridge between the stuff they can't do. So was that the intention of the Good Tea, was to kind of like be a trusted source for people who want to maybe dip their toe into doing wholesale, starting their own small brand, and maybe not having as big of startup capital or something to start this big sort of clothing brand, but maybe to dip their toe in it. Was that the intention behind the Good Tea?
Yeah, exactly. That's totally the intention, because I started it so that even designers,
Right.
the back neck label actually rips out, so that you can actually
Mm,
stamp your own brand. And then I also have hang tags where at the front is left blank, so you can stamp your own brand in. So that's like a stepping stone for you to create,
yep.
your own prints and designs. So that is definitely initially why I started it, and I definitely wanted to restart the brand, because I had closed it down for a bit, because as I was going to India, I started learning about, I was actually reading little articles about farmers committing suicide. And I like regret to say that I didn't like, when you read something, you're like, whoa, that's scary. But then you
Right.
kind of forget about it. But every time I was going there, I'd read about like 100, 200 farmers. And then as I was writing the book, I started like, because it's a textbook, I really wanted to validate everything I was saying. And so as I was like researching, what does fair trade really mean? And
Hmm.
what is fair trade cotton? There's a difference, because fair trade cotton certifies right to the cotton level that people are being treated fairly. So basically, as I was going to India, I was reading I was reading those articles, and then when I was doing the research, I saw some articles on BBC, and I think it was the Guardian as well. I think I have it on the website, but they were saying that up to 300, almost 300,000 farmers have committed suicide since 2006.
When you read that or looked into it more, like, is it because of what? Just they don't have the business, or like what was the insight that you got from that when you read that, or you learned about it?
Oh, well, sorry, the amount, sorry, is actually since 1997, 200,000. So that's,
Wow.
but yeah, when I read that, I was like, oh my God. And like I said, that's so messed up. And I'm like, you know what's so crazy is I've been in the industry for what, 10 years at that point, and I never knew where the farmer was. I was getting things
Hmm.
certified, then that's the global organic textile standards, just to know that it was organic, which is great, right? But I never knew, like, are these people even being treated fairly? Like, are they okay? Like, I've always wanted to see a cotton farm, and so that's kind of on my bucket list. And then I decided, I was like, this is so crazy. So I decided to relaunch the Good Tea and get it fair trade cotton certified. So now I know the whole complete supply chain right to the farmer, which you can see on my website, right to my warehouse. Like, I'm really transparent about everything. And I wanted to really show people that, okay, this is how I believe that you can be like a responsible company. So I just do like what I personally know, and I integrate that into the business. Like, how can I be transparent? What can I do for the environment? And how can I like validate things as well? We got B Corp certified. I'm Fair Trade Cotton certified. I also use Green Story, which you've also, I believe,
Yeah.
past, just to show the matrix of my environment
Hmm.
impact as well. So I just wanted to create something that, was fair trade cotton certified, help, brands as well.
It's a really good point, and I love the idea of talking a little bit about, like you said, fair trade certified versus fair trade cotton, and there's all these different labels, right? It can be, I think, confusing to not only founders but also maybe consumers, right? On what is valid, or what is like just kind of valid, right? Like, so take us through kind of, and you mentioned it a little bit, touched on it a little bit, but what is the difference, right? And do the farmers, do the facilities, right? Do they care about it, right? Does that help them in a way, right? Or does it hurt them in a way? I don't know.
Well, it is expensive to get fair trade certified. I'll be honest with you. I work with one of these factories. He's actually my mentor. He's so amazing. He does so much work for people overseas. And
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh, we should get you fair trade certified." It was like 10,000 US.
Wow. That's a lot. That's a lot. Yeah.
The jump, yeah, I was like, it was so hard, and I was just like, how, I'm like, I can't afford it. Like, you can that's a big investment to
Is
me.
that an annual fee, or is that just one time thing?
No, there is annual fees. I don't, I think it may be a little, it is a bit less, but to get set up, it's 10,000.
Right.
But yeah, it's really expensive.
Well, when you were talking with him, as far as like, do they want even that, right? Does it help them to get that certification?
Yeah, it does. It gives them credibility for sure.
Okay. Okay.
It's just like another headache to them, though, to be honest with you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, people have to keep coming in, and they're doing inspections, and they'll be like, oh, your fire hydrant, it should be at 12 inches, it's at 10
Yeah.
now, and you're like, oh my god, I just need to get this stuff out. And so
Yeah.
it's like, I'm not saying it's bad, I'm just saying that it is good, but it's still like, sometimes the certifiers, like, it's good we're getting certified, but you also have to look at the certifying company and what are they certifying for, because I don't want somebody going into my factory and telling them to stop. Like, at least they have the fire hydrant there, but they put a lot of,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like, why you have to be like that guy? So, like, they do that kind of stuff. And it's like, that's like, you're not helping them. Like, they
Yeah.
should go in there and like fix it themselves. Like, you pay
Yeah.
much for the cert, like, help them do that stuff.
Exactly.
So that's,
Exactly.
yeah, so that's just my opinion. But yeah, certifications are good, but there's a lot of background noise too.
So the fair trade cotton certification, and that is for the farmers, right? Where the fair trade certified is for the facilities, or manufacturers themselves. Is
Yeah,
that
it's the
okay?
whole supply chain. So they go, we have inspections
Gotcha.
that goes to the whole supply chain, but the point is that they're also going into the farmers to help them. They form like collectives to help them with education, because nobody goes to school to be a farmer there. Like, it's all passed down from generation to generation. So they educate them. They don't realize that, this is a business. And the reason why a lot of them are committing suicide is because they are going into crazy debt. People are ripping them off. Like, the ginners will be like, no, no, give us this for like 10 cents when it's like worth $1. Like, cotton is people don't realize it's a commodity. It's traded on the stocks, just
Yeah.
like
Corn or
yeah,
wheat. Yeah.
it does definitely help. Like, a certain percentage goes to them.
Interesting. When I think when you go down a path like this, right? It's hard to. I guess it's hard to not be sort of frustrated in a way too, right? Because you want, I think, everybody to care, from down to the consumer to the companies themselves to the certifiers, right? There's this sort of almost a simple way where everybody can sort of come together and be like, let's just do things better. I was reading a story. This was a while ago, but how like luxury like brands basically like burn their excess product, right?
Oh,
And I was just like blown away by that, right? And it was just like, there's such a facade, right, and fakeness around like a lot of brands, right, and a lot of ones that people really like and enjoy. And it's if they really understand sort of what goes on behind the scenes a little bit, I really think people would think different. So let's talk about the certifications from your point of view, right? And we talked a little bit about the hassle that maybe a manufacturer deals with, like with the fire hydrant stuff. But like, you as an e-commerce company, right, or it's just like a front facing brand, you're not going to have to deal with that part at least, right? But do you think from, a brand's point of view, is the system pretty good now as far as like B Corp, and you are you fair trade certified because of the manufacturer, right? You don't have to go through this whole different process, because since you're using a fair trade certified company already, obviously you're kind of fair trade already, right? Is that sort of how it works? And the B Corp, how is that process as well? I know that could be a long process as well.
Yeah, no, that process, the B Corp process started for me. I swear, oh my God, it's so bad. Like almost 4 years ago, like doing source my garment. Every time I started, I'd quit. Like it's hard. It's so hard. Like, it's so good though. It's so much learning, but every time I was like, okay, I can't do it anymore. It's like it's so hard. And I decided that when I launched the Good Tea, I'm like, you know what? If I'm gonna launch this, I'm gonna do it right. And I really like committed myself to the B
Hmm.
and I came out like, oh my God, this is so great. Like you just have to, yeah, I just love their process. And I learned so much actually. And it was good because, I feel like I learned I know a lot about sustainability, but one part about their piece, which I completely love, is about inclusivity. And I was like, I'm like, yeah, I'm inclusive. I'm brown. Like, obviously, I'm a community. Civil minority, obviously, but it doesn't even just involve that. Like it involves so much, like just even like access to, being able to for people to afford your product. Like, what are you doing to help students? And I just thought it was so great. And through that process, it just gave me so much awareness. And I actually am launching with the Good Tea campaign called the Good Gen, which supports senior inclusivity. And it
Mm,
really made me reflect on myself. I'm like, why don't I have, different cultures and races with my models, but why am I not being inclusive with age? Like
yeah.
I have basics for all, but why don't I have any images of seniors? I'm like, this is
Mm,
and they make up so much of a demographic, and I'm like, this is weird. And I was looked at other brands, and like, there's no other brands that are doing this either. And then I just started learning it through the pandemic about so many seniors who are being hurt and who are
mhm.
like isolated, and like that is like a form of torture, isolation, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I really that I launched, like I've been it will launch in a few weeks, but it's called like the Good Gen campaign, and so I'm giving a certain percentage supports seniors. But I guess full circle is like I don't think I would have had this awareness if I didn't
Mm,
corp certification. So if there's anybody interested in it, it's such a great process, and they have like a preliminary one too, so that you can set your business up like the foundation, the roots from the beginning.
yeah, that's awesome.
So and then yeah, fair trade cotton. I kind of explained why I got that certification, and
Hmm.
it does help for sure. But I think at the most important thing though is your relationship with the factory. Sure, the certifications are great. People want to see it at the end of the day. And I have more people going through the factories and I'm building more awareness. But at the end of the day, it comes back to the relationship you have with your supplier
Hmm. Hmm.
and understanding your process of like how it's being made.
I wanted to go back a little bit to the book, because I think it's such a huge accomplishment. I think it's a really, really difficult thing to do. And I think it's great because I think it's something that can live for a long time, right? As far as the book, and because I think there's still so many people that want to learn about this, right? And should read it, and should be in universities and design schools, right? I think there's courses that should be around this stuff, and your sort of book can be used as an entire course, right? So I think it's really important. I think it's a really important product that the industry sort of needs. When you were doing it, did you talk to big brands at all? Like, did you talk to, or were you kind of just like frustrated with them too much, where you kind of didn't want to, involve them at all, or even, research them, or get them to give you quotes or anything like that? Was that something that you went out your way to do, to talk with them, and to get insight from them at all?
Well, to be honest with you, the whole Rana building collapse that had happened.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, yeah.
Like
That was like a big moment for like me too. I was just like, that was almost like the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, right? It was just like, it was very frustrating.
yeah, it was just so sad. And I thought, there's some companies, I don't want to name them, but
We should.
I know.
Mm.
And I just feel like, you know what? I don't, it's all of them. It's not even just one.
And that's the point, right? Yeah, yeah.
They are, I interviewed with them. I'm like, wow, maybe I can go in there and I can say, like, I pitched my piece about sustainability. I'm like, why don't we do that? And then, you know what they told me? They're like, you know what? Our customers don't care. We care about
Mm.
mine. I'm like, she said it to my face. This was the VP. I don't name this company, but I was like, what? I was like, so like, whoa, I felt like, you know, when somebody like really, it just feels so like taken aback, like, whoa, that's so harsh, right? Like, you don't even
Hmm.
think people think like that. I was like, these people died. And I was like, oh my God. And then I just from that point, I realized too, it took me actually a few years to realize what she had said to me that was so powerful. People are like, well, who's responsible, the brand or the consumer? She freaking told me herself, the customers don't care. Purchase for good. Like, it's really the consumer's job. If we just stop buying from these brands that you have no idea who the suppliers are, like, I'm not just talking about the factory, the whole supply chain, they don't know it, then you know
Hmm.
what? Don't buy from them, because that's what's going to happen. They won't, we control that company, you know, and that's the only reason why H&M is trying to be more like sustainable,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
we've like advocated for that. So it's, yeah, it's the companies, they don't, you have to understand their purpose. Is it just for profit again, or are they like care about social causes? Are they sustainable? Are they ethical? Like, you have to see their values.
Yeah, and it's tough because it kind of goes back to what you said before about cotton. A lot of these companies are publicly traded, right? So they are living quarter by quarter, right, by numbers and margins, and they
Yeah.
want stockholder value. That's what they live for, and it's a very negative. It's a very very difficult approach when you're trying to be better in your industry, right? Because it takes investment to really become a more conscious company, right? It's like you need investors to say, okay, let's invest in this. And that's another thing. Investors need to step up and say, we're not putting our money with these companies, right? Consumers can do a lot, no doubt about it. Consumers can do a lot, but investors can also take their money out of these companies, right? And that would be a much more immediate shock to the system for them. When you shareholders take their money out of your company, right? Like that is also something that I think needs to be aware that the power that investors have in this whole process when you can pay people, models and actresses and actors millions and millions of dollars to do these commercials, right, and run millions of dollars of campaigns and have tens of millions, $100 million, right, in marketing campaigns. But you can't make sure the facility where your people work, even if they're not your employees, which is also a problem. They should be. If you're using a factory to produce your stuff, then you should be liable for that. Like you should want to be able to have them speak volumes of your company. But like to not be able to make sure that the place that you work in is like secure and doesn't fall down and hundreds of people die, but you have enough money to pay $2 million for some actor to do a stupid commercial,
I
you
know.
know? Like that's something that we all should care about, and we all should do our part and to like not buy from them or not buy stock in that company.
Like, support small, support local, like smaller brands is where it's at. Like, we have the most control of like creating and doing good. Like, the bigger companies, they're on a freaking hamster wheel. They didn't even, like, the whole pandemic, I don't know if you read about them canceling like $2 billion worth of orders, and like they're in the middle of production, most of these people, and they're like, sorry, we can't take the product anymore. And now
Hmm.
they're stuck with all this goods. They can't pay their workers. They can't pay the people who, like, in the whole that have worked on it previously before it got to the factory.
It's frustrating. The whole industry has been, and we're not even talking about the environmental aspect of it, of having massive amount of product being produced, right? Every spring, winter, summer, fall, right? It's such that whole part needs to change as well as the mass consumption of buy new stuff every single season, right? And it's just it's a bad rabbit hole to go down because it never ends, and that's just another thing that hopefully technology can solve and getting innovative manufacturing solutions where the production of so much stuff is not as detrimental to our climate as it is, right? I mean, it's really detrimental to produce, fast fashion at a massive scale. It just is, So hopefully there's some people. I know there's some people working on that kind of stuff, but that's also another aspect of all this that hopefully can change.
Yeah, it's just you have to buy less. You have to buy,
Hmm.
stick with natural fibers that are biodegradable because people don't realize the synthetics. It's like wearing a plastic bag. It's like it doesn't biodegrade. It takes 200 years, just like a bag. So
For
that's why
what? Like for what? Like a piece of cloth to.
yeah. So if you look at your labels, the fiber, like if it's polyester, acrylic, nylon, those are man-made fibers. So those are made from oil. Like it's a plastic. It's like
Hmm.
yeah, so it's like not good to wear that stuff. And I know there's people like, of course, we already have so much crap, we need to recycle it, but
Right. Right.
try not to like, start buying from people who are not doing that. So because we just need to stop the vicious cycle.
So what would you ask consumers to look for then when buying stuff?
I would say shop less. I know that sounds weird.
Sure, no, that's an easy one. But when they do shop, right, like with the dyes or the fabrics, like what can they look for on their tags, right?
Oh, on the tag. So, first of all, I would definitely suggest trying to stick with a smaller company. But if they're looking at the tags, for sure, I would say, yeah, like it would be mostly the fiber. Like is it a natural fiber you want to look for? And the thing is you want to look closely at the seams. Like, is it a secure seam? You don't want products that are falling apart. That's not sustainable. That's the whole
Mm,
business model of fast fashion. How quickly can that product fall apart so that they need to rebuy?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
A sustainable company, a responsible company is creating like a really durable fabric, and like that isn't going to like cause tears and stuff. They have strong, secure seams. Those are the kinds of like a good quality fabric, and the way it's stitched will last longer. So that's kind of what you look for. And that unfortunately costs a bit more. But that's where you go into the whole thing was like just buy less, but buy well, like buy good quality pieces.
So usually I like to end a little bit on the future, and I know right now it's a little crazy, of course. But are you sort of optimistic that more consumers will care? More founders that come into the fashion industry will care. That investors will start to care. Are you optimistic at all about the future?
100%. I'm like so like as much as the pandemic has been so sad. There's so much good too, and I feel like it's so amazing when I see on social media people are like, oh, I'm going to support this small business, and like people are so I think so amazing right now, like just being so adamant on supporting small, and I just feel like they get it, and we're taking the time to look at the brands and like understand them. Like it's not like, oh, I need $2 things on Amazon, like really quickly. I just need it tomorrow. People are actually taking the time, which I just find so like I'm so happy about that. So I'm optimistic.
The last question I'll ask is kind of going back to the book a little bit. Have you spoken with universities and maybe even really specifically like design schools, anywhere that is looking at what you've done and created, and being and have it be a learning tool like in institutions? Like I think that's just so important. Has there been any conversations at all?
I've had a few teachers in the United States. I'm in I think, I don't even know how many now, maybe about less than 20 like colleges and universities.
Great.
Um, they're in the libraries, which is good. It's so hard. Like I self-published, and I
Yeah.
didn't realize like you really have to promote yourself. And I just
Sure.
I started it, and then I was like, I love the good tea too, and I just find it's so hard for me to promote everything, So I feel like I need to get out there and really, promote that more. But yeah, I think there's been a lot of interest, and I've had a few teachers say like, you know what, this would make a great course. I would love,
Absolutely.
and I would love to do that one day. One day.
Absolutely. Well, amazing. Thanks so much for taking the time. I think it's I've been fascinated for a while about what you've done so far. I know it's really, really difficult to get this far. So I'm very, gracious that you took the time and keep being a leader and a force in the industry, and keep just trying to make people adopt to your methods, right? And to what you have built. And I hope more and more people will reach out and try to figure out a way to do things better, right? And I always say, like, no change is too small, right? Like, even if it's a little thing within your company that you can do, like, that has a ripple effect that you would not believe, right? For positivity. So I appreciate you taking the time, and best of luck the rest of this